at party headquarters in White Plains. Lawyer Ron Stokes of Rybrook was chosen before the meeting. County Democratic Chairman Andrew Spano said. Andrew Spano became the County Democratic Chairman. You remember? I used to talk to you about him. Now folks, I just want to leave you with this. You tell me that judges are not political. You tell me that this is a good system. Case after case after case is ruled on a political basis. Directions of the political boss, ruled by the party. This is a terrible system. It has to be done away with. Now pretty soon, in a couple of days, you'll hear the Republican nominees for judges. There was a conference scheduled. Hi, Jeannie Cat. There was a he used to sleep here. She loves his 600-watt light. There was a conference scheduled before Judge Silverman on Glendora versus Kofal, Dolan, Atada, and the other defendants on Cablevision for violating a state law. That a cable TV operator shall not exercise editorial control over a public access program. So I went and I checked the calendar on the outside of the courtroom door, and my name was there, Glendora versus Kofal, and all these other Cablevision people. And I got there around 9:20. First of all, I had some things notarized by by Francis and Harrison. And I got there at 9:20. And I waited, and the room was filled with evil lawyers, about 16 of them, 3 of whom were female. And then 2 by 2, the lawyers go before the judge, and there's a discussion, and then he says, you have so-and-so ready by such and such a date, and they're out the door. And so the contents of the room empties rather rapidly, and he did this 6 or 7 cases, and then there were about 4 of us left, and he says, does anybody else have any business in this courtroom? And I came up with my letter from him saying that there would be a preliminary conference on June the 1st. And I showed it to Nancy Carlucci, his clerk, and the stenographer is Joseph Papillo's daughter. And Nancy said, no, she says, we canceled this because we're going to have a conference on June 20th. And Judge Silverman repeated that. And then I said to Judge Silverman, you know, how is this case coming? You know, these motions and complaint went in March the 29th, and here it is June the 2nd, 1st rather. So he looked at me rather paternally and sort of smiled a little bit and said, and nobody showed up for Cablevision, and I was the only one there. The notice of appeal of Judge Broderick's second bad decision, this one being on Cablevision, that it's okay for Cablevision to break a law of the United States. That's okay. So I filed a notice of appeal for that, and that cost $100, $105. I asked for a copy of the docket, and they charged me 50 cents a page on that. Frankly, I think that that is against New York state law, Freedom of Information law. I really don't think you can do that. They say 25 cents is the maximum. But I don't have time to fight that one right now. And here's the gathering of the papers for that. Now, this is the gathering of the papers for the appeal of Judge Broderick's first bad decision that Gannett is not an antitrust in Westchester. Those are the papers for that. Sent the dispute about Pekin, allowing Scott Lord to operate a business in Nassau County without a consumer affairs license. We have sent that to Newsday and also to Channel 12 out in Long Island. They have done nothing about it. We have not heard from the district attorney of Nassau County, Dennis Dillon, or his office, Steve Irace. We have not heard from them. And here's Shrewsbury's affirmation in opposition to enlarging my time to perfect the appeal on the Fredman bad decision. And here's the notice of motion to enlarge it. I think you know that. Yeah, we read all that last week. And on Duberstein, Hall, Maloney, Jones, Mann, Kavanaugh, O'Connell, Joseph Derby, Scott Lord, Jan Stahl, and Jeffrey Barnes on the week Thursday, May the 26th to June the 2nd.
Here we are, folks, with both kitties. Here's little Katie cat. Katie cat, are you Glenny's little kitty? Katie's going to be 5 years old. I saved her life 5 years ago, on 4th of July. Pretty green eyes, and she wants to be fed. And this is little Katie cat, Ginny cat. And Katie's not going to move over so you can see little Ginny cat. Okay, so it's time to feed the kids again. I just fed them 2 hours ago. College Athletic Department, they had signs in the department, they had signs on the door, and it says, if you're too tall for this, to go through this door, report to the basketball coach. If you're too wide to go through this door, report to the football coach. And if you took a bite out of this door, report to the hockey coach. Harry was trying to impress this new girlfriend, and she says, oh, well, what do you do for work? He said that he graduated from college. He says, well, I'm on the cutting edge of technology. And so his buddy told the truth. His buddy says, that's right, he mows the lawns at IBM. The graduate from medical school came home with his diploma, and he said to his mother and father, here's the diploma that you wanted me to get from medical school to be a doctor, and now I'm going to go out and be a fireman, just the way I've been telling you since I was age 6. And everybody, these are the work papers for the appellant's brief to appeal the bad decision of Judge Broderick that Gannett is not an antitrust in Westchester County. And we're coming along very, very fast on that. So here we are up to already. Here's the front page. And then you have the table of contents and the points. Well, the points will have to be put in last, because that's just about where we are, is writing down the points. The table of authorities, that's the laws that support your argument. The laws that Judge Broderick wrote and Gannett wrote. And this is a basis of the appellate jurisdiction and statement of issues presented. Those are the questions about. I'll read you all this when it's done and when it's about to be submitted. The statement of the case and the statement of facts, and we just finished that this morning. I want to read to you again what a good judge should do. Due process mandates an unbiased, impartial judge. Listen to that, everybody. Due process mandates an unbiased, impartial judge, free from any personal interest in the verdict. Where do you ever get that these days? Incorporated is selling for $52.05 a share. Cablevision is selling for $44 a share. Judge Broderick is expected to be back in July. It's outrageous. They said that, that he was expected to be back in January. Yeah, you heard that for a long time, and that never happened. I doubt very much that this will happen. Here it is, June, and he's going to be back in July. And here is the notice of appeal of the Broderick decision on Gannett. It's not an antitrust in Westchester. I think we've covered most of this. A mother was asked by a reporter, what do you like best about Christmas? And she says, what I like best is seeing the kids hang up their stockings, because a year goes by before they hang up anything else. So I think we're all up to date on Glendora versus Gannett Suburban Newspapers, Gannett Company Incorporated, John Curley, Gary Watson, Douglas McCorkindale, Gary Sherlock, Kenneth Paulson. A dispute that started with the brat actions of one Mitch Broder, a reporter, and who's is still here, writing a story about every 2 weeks, one story every 2 weeks about, and that started in November of 1989. And the fight still goes on in June 2nd, 1994. The other aspect of this Broder-Gannett law breaking, the other part of it is that the libel case, the decision of the appellate division, is before 7 judges of the New York State Court of Appeals, and there should be a decision on that. The thing that's before them is, may I have leave to appeal this bad decision of the appellate division before the New York State Court of Appeals. I want it reversed because Gannett obviously committed libel. But you don't have any judges because of the thing I just showed you, political. They need that political endorsement every election time, so they don't dare rule against Gannett. Gannett is a monopoly and an antitrust, and they don't dare rule that Gannett committed libel. The cats with full stomachs have left us now, folks. What do they care about us? Now they're sleeping. What a life they have. They never do anything for you. They never do any work. You save their lives. That's going to get me to heaven, I think. The fact that I save their lives and I spend all this time every day administering to them. Now, Katie's going to be 5 on July 4th, and Ginny is going to be 3 at the same time, July 4th. We're talking now about what happened to Glendora versus the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal. Cats, before they left, they had to knock the microphone on the floor. New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal, Governor Mario Cuomo, Angelo J. Aponte, David Ayala, Joseph Fernandez, Barbara M. Mays, and Carol Short. We took this appellant's brief apart and we sent the argument to every one of these defendants. Aren't these nice the way they're bound like that? If you get the right size comb binding, you have to have a little one if it's a little paper. But you can't beat these comb bindings. There's an antitrust suit, by the way, against the people who make these, General Binding Corporation. They had to pay a big fine, and also Gestatna. And we did the same thing. That's Coppola 1, this is Coppola 2. Glendora against Stephen Cohen, Myron Holtz, Gary Friedland, the William Street DHCR, John Wallach, Veronica Diaz, and the Queens DHCR par docket number. Those are the defendants and respondents, and this is the appellant's brief. So we sent that in the same envelope with this. Again, just the argument, stating what they did wrong and stating why the appellate division should reverse the bad decision of Judge Coppola, which again was a political decision. You tell me judges aren't political based on the thing that I just read you? It's a sham. It's such a cover-up. It's such a charade. And I believe that that's everything. Marilyn says, when I'm down in the dumps, I buy new clothes. And another woman says, is that where she gets them? The time on the DHCR and William Street and Judge Coppola last week was about an hour and a half, and the time this week was about 2 hours. $20 to copy it, to print it, and it's about $15 to post it. Glendora versus the DHCR and all those people and Judge Coppola for about, well, I guess until I get the respondents' briefs on both Coppola 1 and Coppola 2, and then I have to send in a reply brief.
And I think that will be it for about a year and a half. It'll take the appellate division a year and a half for an oral argument, and then about a month after that for a decision. Joe, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on earth. And Joe says, that's right, honey. You'd get killed in a rush. Take care. I think it's so unfair, the way I have to feed the cats and I can't eat. And I have to stay on a diet. This is what Judge Holland does. United States Bankruptcy Court, Eastern District. He writes at the same time he announces his decision. He said, he'll say, order approved as per the record and the date and so forth. That's what he does. The verse says, Lydia Gallicano. Lawrence Gallicano shouldn't be even in the action. His name should have been taken out of the caption a long time ago. She's a former landlord. I'm a former tenant of hers. And John Ernberger, her son-in-law, a lawyer, wrote one of the most pathetic oppositions that I've ever read. And this is my opposition to that, to the Supreme Court of the State of New York, the appellate term, the 9th and 10th Judicial Districts. Present, presiding justice is Andrew DePaula. Patricia Collins and Angelo and Gracia are associate justices. Lydia Gallicano and Lawrence Gallicano, landlord respondents against Glendora Buell, tenant appellant, and I'm the applicant, and the case number is 93-1563 WC for Westchester County. Glendora writes to Judge DePaula, this opposition by Gallicano-Ornberger to my motion to compel restitution never got to me until after the return date of May the 23rd, 1994. That is not fair. There is a lot in this opposition by Gallicano-Ornberger for Glendora to oppose. Her opposition follows. She asks that the court consider it since she did not receive the Gallicano-Ornberger paper until after the return date, White Plains, New York, dated May 28, 1994. Plaintiff opposes Gallicano-Ornberger opposition to plaintiff's motion to compel Lydia Gallicano to pay the judgment of $1,580 plus interest. Glendora, being duly sworn, deposes and says her reasons follow for opposing Gallicano. Ornberger opposition to Glendora's motion to compel Lydia Gallicano to pay the judgment of $1,580 plus the interest plus the costs. Point 1, son-in-law lawyer Ornberger writes, the landlord respondents are frankly confused as to what the tenant's appellant is seeking to obtain. Glendora writes, why so? The appellant term made it abundantly clear that they reversed Judge Holden's decision, and now Gallicano owes Glendora $1,550 plus $30 plus interest. Point 2, Ornberger writes, the $1,250 that was held in escrow with the Westchester County is exactly the amount that the tenant appellant owed the landlord respondent for unpaid rent. Because this amount is now in the hands of the respondents, that would be Gallicano or Ornberger, under what right does appellant demand the return? Under the right, dear Ornberger Gallicano, that the appellate term reverse the judgment of Judge Holden and dismiss the petition, it could not be much plainer. Judge Holden said Glendora owed the money, but the appellate term reversed Judge Holden's decision, hence the money must be returned. I don't see anything difficult to understand about that, do you? Point 3, Ornberger writes, appellant wrongfully withheld a total of $1,250 from her rent that was due, and because respondent reclaimed this money, appellant believes she's entitled to the return. Glendora writes, naturally. Appellant rightfully withheld $1,250 from her rent for the Gallicano breach of warranty of habitability. Judge Holden unconstitutionally forced Glendora to pay $1,250 to the court as a condition of her trial. Now it comes all very clear to me why Judge Holden refused to put that in writing. It was unconstitutional. 6 times I asked him to put that in writing. Judge Holden refused to put this in writing. Understandably, he did not want a record of it. It is a bad practice. And so did Judge Ingracia's administrative court office say so. The appellate term reversed Judge Holden's judgment of $1,550 and told Glendora she was to get the money by restitution. The appellant is entitled to the $1,550 plus $30 plus interest. Point 4, Ornberger writes, Lydia Gallicano was never served with a demand for restitution. Oh, lawyers. What deceivers, what liars. Lawyer, liar. That's why they want to be called attorney, because lawyer sounds like liar. Service was made on John Ornberger. However, John Ornberger is not a party to this action. Lydia Gallicano did not return to New York State until April 24, 1994. Glendora writes, Lydia Gallicano was served with a demand for restitution by Richard Young. It was substitute service in full compliance with Rule 308B. Richard Young consummated service at the home of Lydia Gallicano, 42 Longview Avenue, White Plains, New York, 10605 on April 1st, 1994. 3 persons witnessed this service: Richard Young's wife, Kathy, Franklin Buell, and Glendora. Ornberger is under oath under penalty of perjury. Here is the affidavit of service. Once an action is started, service is to be upon the lawyer anyhow, and that is what Richard Young did. First, John Ornberger limps out of a lawsuit by saying that Glendora served him instead of Lydia Gallicano, and then the next time he's limping out because Glendora served Lydia Gallicano instead of him, Ornberger. Ornberger writes, point 5, appellant serves documents on respondents that are extremely self-serving and confusing with the appearance of judicial approval. All right, let's take the self-serving. We're going to serve documents that are against us and for them. Now, does that make sense? Now, he made the same blooper in Judge Holden's court. And now let's go after the appearance of judicial approval. What did we send him? A copy of the appellate terms judgment. Res judicata, $1,580. Decision reversed. Isn't it awful how they lie and steal and cheat? Glendora writes, this is the lawyer who never submitted a brief. You know, Ornberger never submitted a brief to the appellate term. That is, untimely a brief, and they sent it right back to him, as the decision of the appellate term states, and he never showed up at the oral argument. Point 6, Ornberger writes, in sum, defendants by their attorney John Ornberger, son-in-law, he doesn't say, respectfully request that this court issue an order in accordance with the above listed affirmations. The order's already been issued, John. The court, the appellate term, reversed Judge Holden's decision. Now this is, you know, nobody can be this dumb. He's just playing dumb. He's just an escape, a runaway. And further, John Ornberger asks that the appellant pay all costs of this motion, including attorney's fees. Glendora writes, the appellate term has already made its decision. The matter is res judicata. Gallicano missed her chance to reply to the restitution. She had 20 days to answer it. She ignored it entirely. Point 7, the process server for Ornberger does not reside in the state of New York. It's Sadie Russo, and she lives way out in New Jersey. Point 8, this paper by John Ornberger is another in a succession of not telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Point 9, for instance, John Ornberger no longer lives at 2 Greenwich Avenue, but that's the address he used, White Plains, New York, apartment 1L. That apartment has been vacant. We go by it 3 or 4 times a day. The shades have been drawn for the past 2 weeks. He doesn't even live there, and he doesn't tell the appellate term that he lives at 42 Longview Avenue. White Plains, New York, 10605. Point 10, we sent the sheriff after Lydia Gallicano's bank accounts, but she had closed those, and the cost of that was $10.46. Point 11, we sent the sheriff after her at her home, 42 Longview Avenue, White Plains, New York, 10605, another $10.46, but she and her son-in-law lawyer have been dodging the sheriff for 2 weeks. Point 12, now we have sent the sheriff after her tenants, the upstairs and downstairs tenants at 40 Longview Avenue, where Glendora used to live, to make the tenants pay the rent to the sheriff. That cost $20.92. So you see it's 20, 30, 40 is out to $50 almost. Dated White Plains, New York, May the 28th, 1994. Yours in truth, Glendora, Box 416, White Plains, New York. Subscribed and sworn to before me the 31st day of May, 1994. And here's the affidavit of service by Franklin, which tells the appellate term. Oh, that's the affidavit of service of Richard Young on John Ornberger and on Lydia Gallicano. And this is the motion to compel Lydia Gallicano to pay the judgment. She's the debtor judgment. And here's John Ornberger's screwy paper. And here's the affidavit of service by Franklin Buell that he served these upon them. Called up from Port Chester last night, Wednesday, when the program was on Cablevision, Harrison and Port Chester, and she asked for a happy buck. So we sent her a happy buck. From the Brooklyn Yellow Pages, and it's lawyers handling landlord-tenant cases. Now maybe you can look in your Yellow Pages, in the Westchester Yellow Pages, see if you find lawyers who handle landlord-tenant cases. Maybe you just better do it yourself. Forget about a lawyer. We went over to the sheriff, and here's the execution with notice to garnishee, and it would be the rents of the tenants who live at 40 Longview Avenue. Mario Vasquez, and M.S. Gomez. That's on the second floor, and on the first floor, you have to buy one for each one. Eisen, E-Y-S-S-E-N, and Martinez. And that's to pay the rent to the sheriff, since Lydia Gallicano will not pay the judgment that the appellate term ruled against her. And here's the check to the sheriff for $20.42 to do that. And that was executed on Wednesday. That would be Wednesday, May the 25th. And they took it right over that afternoon. And they posted one to the door. Nobody was at home. And of course the sheriff doesn't go back the way the sheriff should. And then they mailed it by first class, and they mailed it by certified mail. There was a sign in the restaurant window, and it says, "Don't make fun of our coffee. Someday you'll be old and weak too." And I believe you're up to date now. As I say, the sheriff is still being dodged, and the money has not been collected. And we tried 4 different ways to do that, to collect the money. Okay. This is what happened on Glendora versus Lydia Gallicano from May the 26th, 1994, Thursday, to June the 2nd, 1994, Thursday. Peter has a new girlfriend, and he took her to the restaurant to have dinner, and he's ordering away here from the menu, and Peter says, "How do you like your rice? Boiled or fried?" And she says, "Thrown." James Walsh et al. On the period from Thursday to Thursday, the 26th of May to the 2nd of June. It's the videotaping Thursday. I started at 5:40 a.m. I got it all finished, and then I had to do the work on a chat with Glendora, labeling the tapes and indexing them and filing them and planning to how to edit, and then in the afternoon we edited. We gave a police report to Officer Fisher, the second one this week, about Roberta, the audio tape that I played you last week, screaming about keeping the door in the basement open when the landlord says, "I'd like to catch who's doing that." Well, we've caught who's doing it. It's Roberta Walsh and Daniel Walsh. We cleaned the green rug. It took about 20 rinses. We cleaned out the back of the dryer. When Johnny came back from the washing machine service place, that was a good chance to get the dust out of there. It really is sort of sickening to put your clean clothes in a dryer when the back of it is so dirty and dusty. It took about 20 wipes, rinsing the cloth about 20 times to get that done. So it's nice and clean in there now, and Johnny did a great job. He couldn't fix the blower blade. Instead, they never could get that piece off the shaft. He was hitting it with a big hammer and they never could get it off, so they put in a whole new unit there, the shaft, and now it works nice and quietly. So I told him that the sign, nice sign that he put on the wall, what number to call if there was a breakdown, that had been vandalized and taken off and thrown on the table, and that I had returned it to the wall. Porzio has never returned the calls for a week. Thursday and Friday were days of peace. Franklin made 2 trips to the police station, different days, to get the police reports. Saturday was a day of peace. Richard and Kathy Young are going to Virginia June the 8th, and I will miss them. They're very nice neighbors. I went out into the field and sat. It's beautiful out there, folks. Of course, with the field being bucolic, with all those trees and all those bushes and shrubs, there's lots of birds come there, and they sing such pretty songs. Here's a copy of the criminal information that I made a year ago to the Do-Nothing Assistant District Attorney Goretto and the Do-Nothing White Plains Police. The Memorial Day flag is flying, and this is June the 6th, D-Day, 50 years ago. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Franklin was in D-Day. I finally sent this letter to Chief Bradley, that the White Plains Police, anybody can break the law, and the White Plains Police don't do anything about it. And they haven't stopped Daniel, Roberta, and James Walsh from breaking the law. Here are the reports, I guess. I don't think I read them to you. These are the reports that I gave Officer Fisher. Officer Fisher writes, while on patrol, I was approached by a complainant who reported the following. Complainant stated on above date at approximately above time, as she was walking into her apartment, she heard Roberta Walsh, also of the above, twice say F blank blank KU, only he wrote it out, Glendora. Glendora stated this was unprovoked and felt this was done to harass her. Well, it was obviously done to harass her. This report leaves out a lot. I say please go back and read Glendora's affidavit to Judge Wood of last week about the May 20th, 1994, Friday, 7 p.m. attack by Roberta and Daniel Walsh. On May the 29th, 1994, Memorial Day Sunday, the Walshes went away Friday. It was a day of peace. Saturday was a day of peace, and so was Sunday. And there was no cigarette smoke smell, and there was no littering, and the cellar door was closed the way it should be closed, and it was quiet. If it's awarded. Glendora said to Wilson Bobby that she would be there for the discovery on June the 22nd unless it conflicts with a court date that she has before Judge Colabella. And Alexandra Karamatzos was sort of like a brat on the telephone, so unless she changes her attitude, I won't go to the discovery. And this is another report by Officer Fisher, report taken over the phone. I spoke with complainant, that's Glendora, who reported on 5/25/94 at 18:55 hours. The cellar door at above location was propped open with a trash can. Complainant stated that she moved the trash can. Roberta Walsh yelled at her to leave the door open. Complainant stated this. Sorry, can't read it. Complainant further reported that after she said something, it was to her. Oh, after she said something, it was about on the tape recorder, she heard Daniel Walt say something like, "She's an idiot, but she can tell time." That's a good full report, Officer Fisher. In addition to harassment, a criminal violation, here is another law that Roberta and Daniel Walsh broke Wednesday night, this same incident. Emotional distress resulting from another tort. In cases involving intentional, and that's what this is, or wanton or willful torts, recovery is allowed for mental anguish unaccompanied by physical contact or injury, or for a physical injury. We won't go into that because that's not the case. In an action for a tort based on malicious and wrongful acts of the defendant. And that's what we have here in the case of Daniel and Roberta Walsh, where the acts result in substantial damages. The jury is entitled to consider not only the actual money damages, but also such other damages as necessarily arise out of the acts, including damages for mental suffering and anxiety, if the effect of such damage is to produce suffering and anxiety. And circumstances, genuineness, a guarantee of genuineness in the circumstances surrounding the alleged mental disturbance. The total time on walks all this week is 17 hours. Why do they call your buddy Sanka? Bob was asked, why do they call your buddy Bill Sanka? That's a queer nickname to give anybody. And Bill said, no, Bob said why they called his buddy Bill Sanka, how he got the nickname. Bob said, they call him Sanka because there's no active ingredient in the bean. And Roberta and Daniel Walsh. And so there's the affidavit of what happened. That was for Judge Wood. And it's dated May the 28th, 1994. And it was, a copy was sent to Bruce Bendish, and it was received by the court on May the 31st, the day after Memorial Day. Oh gee, don't say Labor Day, that means fall's coming again. This is the great one, Memorial, and summer is coming. I wrote also an affidavit to Alexandra Karamatzos at Wilson Bave, Conway, Comboy, Cousins. Glendora has already answered your question once, that is in the complaint. Then she answered them again way back in December of 1993. This took considerable time. Glendora is not going to spend any more time on this. You are not paying her by the hour as you are getting paid by the hour. She has read all of the discovery you have sent, the bill of particulars, and all the other discovery demands. She knows the content thereof. Her answers to the same are true and to her understanding. The discovery date of June the 22nd may have to be changed because Glendora has an appearance before Judge Colabella that day. Glendora will be videotaping your oral examination and audio taping it. And if you talk like a brat, as you did over the phone on May the 27th, 1994, Friday at 5 p.m., Glendora will not come to the discovery on June 22nd. You will have to get an order from Judge Wood compelling her. Further, Glendora, as per Article 31, CPLR, requests a copy of the discovery and all that happens there, dated White Plains, New York, May 28, 1994. Civil Practice Laws and Rules, the CPLR. Subscribed and sworn to before me the 31st day of May, 1994. So Tuesday, May the 31st, I went to Judge Wood's chambers, May 17th, to hand in this affidavit. And on Wednesday, I believe it was, or Tuesday, later after I did that, we received a decision from Judge Wood. It's his third bad decision, but forget it, Judge Wood doesn't make the decisions anyway. His ill-tempered law clerk does, and his name is Carlucci. I've forgotten what his first name is. And I will read you that very bad piece of, well, I hate to even call it work. I will read you that output, and then I will tell you what I've decided to do about it. Tuesday was a day of peace, Wednesday was a day of peace, and this is Thursday at noon, and so far it's been a day of peace. And that's what has happened on Glendora versus Walsh family, etc. on from Thursday to Thursday, May the 26th to June the 2nd. That when I said to my future wife, and I apologize, I said I'm not much to look at, she said to me, "That's okay, dear, you'll be in the office most of the day anyhow."
Just as I thought might happen, and as I told you, Russell Brower's opposition to my motion to dismiss the appeal and turn the undertaking over to me, which is what the court rewarded me, was sent back by the appellate term. It was sent back to him. We called Mr. Rios. Rios is the crackerjack of the appellate term in Brooklyn of the 9th and 10th Judicial Districts. And so ours was sent back too. Let me say again how that happened. I made the motion. The return date of the motion was April 22nd. Finally, 25 days later, Brower wakes up and he writes an opposition to the motion. And then, that, you know, 25 days late. So the appellate, so I wrote an opposition to his opposition to the appellate term. Mine was sent out and mine was returned. This is my, that I kept, my copy, and this is the original that I sent to the appellate term. And then we found out from Mr. Rios that Russell Brower's opposition was also returned. That means that the judges didn't look at it and will never look at it. The only thing that is before the judges right now is my motion to dismiss the appeal and turn the undertaking over to me. Holly said to her blind date, "Dick, has anybody ever told you how wonderful you are?" And Dick says, "No. Why?" And Dolly says, "Well, where'd you get the big idea?" Take care. This is the stipulation in order from Judge Colabella for the Fund for Modern Courts to do discovery, to answer the questions, in other words, to come up with the truth. The Fund for Modern Courts, one, refused to sign this and refused to return it to Judge Colabella. So there's a conference on June the 16th. At that conference, I will tell them what they did, and I will ask for sanctions. It's beyond me how the Fund for Modern Courts, which is a court reform organization, can deny the court process. So that's on June the 16th, and I will ask for that. This is Elizabeth Hubbard, Alan Beck, Michelle Mayapath, and the Fund for Modern Courts, 36 West 44th Street, New York, New York 10036. Their lawyer, I don't know, it's a strange relationship. His name is Edmund Purvis, he's in Larchmont, and he called me and said that they would not be coming to the discovery May the 31st in the county courthouse at 2 p.m. And he wouldn't answer any questions. Why? He just continued to say dumb things. And so, and I will continue reading the discovery law, the disclosure rules. Here's some of it. And here's a whole lot more of it. It's Article 30, Article 31, Bill of Particulars, oral examination, demand to produce who the witnesses are going to be. Do that. This is all from the CPLR. So I will read all that. You know, there wouldn't have to be all this if people would just be honest. First of all, don't break the law. First of all, live by the Golden Rule, the Ten Commandments and Beatitudes. That'd be fine. But when you break the law, admit it and make amends and make good. But don't lie and cover up, and that's what these people are doing. All this lie and all this cover up. And here is a court organization doing that. That's really not the way to live. It's not the way to have a good society. It's to break the law, number one, in the first place, and then two, to go around covering up and lying. My daughter is searching for the perfect guy. My daughter is searching for the perfect guy. And I told her, give up, honey, your mother found the last one. The morning Cablevision was videotaped, and then it took 2.5 hours to decide where to distribute all the programs and to label them and to index them and to plan for the editing, and then it took all afternoon to do the editing. Or around there sometime, or late in the afternoon, middle of the afternoon, I made vegetarian burger, rice burger. You take your rice, you take 1 cup of rice and 3 cups of water, and you cook it until the water has disappeared. And in the meantime, while it's cooking, while the rice is cooking, you saute your onions, a couple of onions chopped up, and then you put into that vegetarian burger. And it tastes just like hamburger, but it's all made from textured vegetable protein. Majorly soy, and no cholesterol. And then you brown that with the onions, and then when the rice is done, you mix them all together, and you serve it with soy sauce. You never tasted anything better than that. Programs that got done on Thursday were 1491. I checked it over and cleaned it up and made a VHS of it, archived. And 1492 was cleaned up and checked over and made a VHS of that. Now this is all in 3 hours. It's quite an accomplishment. And 1493 laid it down. That's a half-hour, 3/4 inch program, put music and graphics on it. 1494 edited that with music and graphics. That was Walsh chapter 57. And then we made a VHS of 1493. And 1495 was, I guess that was, yeah, that was all edited. That's on 3/4 inch, a half-hour program of music and graphics, and that was Brower, number 19, and Modern Course, number 15. At 6:25 p.m. we started 1495. That's Franco and myself, and we got that done. And then I did the 1 to 5 for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That was backlog while I was watching the 3/4 inch being made. 1946, we did Cablevision log on TV, reading the motion to sanction Kofal and Dolan defendants and Tata and all those people who broke the law and keep covering it up. And at 6:46 p.m. we started the VH archive of 1496, and we started 1497, and 7 minutes of that got done. Now that's a lot to get done from 4 to 7 p.m. in the afternoon. And then I came home, went to bed. Process to index all of the contents and all of the tapes, and it's a long process to label them, and then to decide which ones are going to which cable company on what dates, and to decide which ones will be erased and which ones will be used and will be taped over. Well, that's the same thing, will be taped over again, and which ones to send to different cable companies. A program is only on one cable company one time. There are no repeats, but some programs are played on different cable companies, more than one cable company. And Friday the dryer man came, and he fixed up the dryer all nicely, and it sounds very, very nice. Good man. His name is Johnny. Friday up until 4:35 p.m., and that consisted of 160 telephone calls, and got the telephoning up to date again. I checked Rockland County to see if a chat with Glendora was on, and it was, and I heard the man play it over the telephone. That would be Jim Cahagan up in West Nyack. He keeps track of it for me up there. TKR is a very good cable company. They always play your programs, and they always play them right. That's in Rockland County and some in northern New Jersey.
I read the scheduling order on the Gattell appeal. It's really neat the way the United States Court of Appeals handles things, much better than the appellate division of the Supreme Court of the state of New York. I didn't get started on Scott until 6:38 p.m. But I did pages 1 to 8 of the appellant's brief. I was Friday night, and I finished Scott, spent 5.5 hours on Scott Saturday. A lot of that was the appellant's brief. And 11:44 a.m. I started Broder, and I worked a lot on that appellant's brief. And we made pancakes, and we did Esteves. Esteves is pretty much done, but we got the brief, the argument of Coppola 1 and Coppola 2 copied and got it ready to mail. And then for Lydia, we worked on the log, and that took about all day Saturday to do Scott, Broder, Esteves, and Lydia. Window that said, "Don't make fun of our coffee. Someday you'll be old and weak too." Got wall done. The backlog was way back to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that's up to date. I wrote the affidavit to Judge Wood about what happened Wednesday night, Roberta and Daniel Walsh. We went to church. The Folsoms didn't go to church. This is Memorial Day Sunday, and they sang America and America the Beautiful in the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I walked the dog, the minister's dog. And then we went to see the Folsoms, and I think it's wonderful that Joan and Strom gave their 36th anniversary, their Memorial Day anniversary, when they were married, to their parents. Strom put in an air conditioner, and Harry across the street helped him do it. And then Joan came down and put in all kinds of seedlings, plants, begonias and marigolds. Isn't that nice that they gave their anniversary day to their 91-year-old parents? We resumed Scott. No, we resumed Wall, and then we did Brower, and then we did Modern Courts, the reading, and then we did Cablevision. And that's pretty much just the log right now. And going through the files and keeping the files in order. It's a huge collection. It's this wide, and it consists of 13 volumes. So that by Sunday night we had done them all. Scott, Broder, Esteves, Brower, Wall, Modern Courts, and Lydia, and Cablevision. It took 2 days to go around it this time. It used to take a day or half a day. Apology to the Association of the Bar of the City of New York, 45 West 44th Street. Fern Shara Sussman is the Executive Secretary and Chief Administrative Officer, and they sent me back this letter. Alan Rothstein is the counsel to the Executive Secretary, May 20th, 1994. This letter is in response to your letter regarding Robert M. Kalaji. Please be advised that the Association does not participate in the investigation and prosecution of attorney misconduct. Well, I wasn't asking them to. Complaints about attorneys are handled entirely by disciplinary agencies under the authority of the court system. If you would like to file a complaint against an attorney practicing in Westchester, you should contact the Grievance Committee for the 9th Judicial District at 399 Knollwood Road, White Plains, which you appear to have done. Yeah, it doesn't do any good to complain to them. They just cover up. For the lawyers, I'd like to remind you again of the 2 laws that Cablevision broke. First, the state law, the New York Executive Law, Article 28, Section 829.3, no cable television company may prohibit or limit any program or class or type of program presented over a leased channel or any channel made available for public access. The cable television franchisee shall not exercise any editorial control over any public channel designated for public access. Now that's the state law. Here's the federal law. A cable operator shall not exercise any editorial control over any public use of channel capacity. Do not forget that. Everybody else seems to want to sweep it under the rug. Cablevision and Judge Broderick, but it can't be. And here's a letter, no signature, no name, and it's from Satterley, Stevens, Burke and Burke. And they're using the wrong name. The correct name is Glendora. And it says, please be advised that pursuant to Judge Broderick's order dismissing the complaint in light of footnote 1 of his decision regarding sanctions, defendants will not file their pending motion for sanctions against you with this court. Very truly yours, Satterley, Stevens, Burke and Burke. And I say no name, no signature. It's a cover-up. They're fugitives of discovery. The motion anyhow was a bluff and it was a threat. The motion anyhow was frivolous, frenetic, and desperate. It was a bad decision by Judge Broderick. It's being appealed before 3 other judges who, they say Mrs. Buell. I says, there is no Mrs. Buell in this case. Can't you read a caption? It says Glendora. More to send around the complaint for. First, DeGoman Burke. How much did you rip off the shareholders for this one letter? Glendora. And then on Sunday, we got together. This TV log goes out to Charles Forma and to Irvin Polinsky of Cablevision and to Burke, and it also goes out to a friend of mine. And I looked through the pile by the typewriter. There's lots of things there to be done. Send her protest to Judge Broderick's decision to somebody who looks over what judges do, federal judges do, in Washington, D.C. The time on Cablevision Sunday was 2.5 hours, and the time for the week on Cablevision, it isn't filled in here. Maybe it's down here. Oh, I guess it was something like 11 or 12 hours. Some sewing and watch primetime TV, and then it was time to go to bed. And I'm still 160 pounds and the temperature is 57 degrees. Isn't it beautiful? And that's the end of what happened on Glendora versus Cablevision on the week of 5/23/1994, Memorial Day week. Cablevision to be done. Well, there was, but I didn't get into it. And but there was all of the 5A to letters and the 1 to 5 and the 3 a.m. blocks to make up for 18 days because of Cablevision. Cablevision having set it behind, so. County courthouse to hand in the Wood affidavit, and I stopped into Judge Silverman's courtroom and watched him do some hearings, some conferences so-called. Getting the Cablevision file, lawsuit 3, breaking the federal law, getting the court clerk's file in order. They're missing about 3 things. And then while I was there, I went up to Judge Gattel's chambers, and he was having a trial. It was something about flakeboard. And Judge Bryan's courtroom was dark. This was Wednesday afternoon at about 3. And Judge Schwartzberg's courtroom was dark. And they still have his name up on the door. He's the judge who died. He was a great judge. And then Judge Fox was about to have an arraignment, and then Judge Broderick's courtroom is black. It's black all the time. Nothing ever goes on there. And I think that's what happened on Glendora versus Kofalt and Dolan and Tata and Lusgarten and Bell and Quinn and Garger and Aznara and Former and Polinsky. I don't have the caption here with me, but that and Cablevision Systems Corporation. For this week, Bill said to the dentist, "Doc, you still haven't pulled the right tooth." The dentist says, "Well, I'm getting closer and closer. Take care, everybody. Stand up for your rights." Remember, you have rights, and there's always somebody around who will lie, steal, and cheat and try to take them away from you. And try to make you think that you don't have rights, but you do. Keep the courage flaming. Bye-bye. This is James Walsh, and this is on D-Day, June the 6th, 1994, and the time's 5:45 p.m. And that's Daniel Walsh, and they have a car, and they can go to the ballpark where they should be done. It shouldn't be done outside of my bedroom window, and it shouldn't be done in the parking lot. This is not a playground. They have a car, they can take the mitts and the ball to the playground and do it. And this is intentional harassment. Daniel Walsh says she can't help it if she's nuts. And that's abusive and insulting language. And this is why James Walsh is such a brat, because of his father.
Yeah, I'm a brat.
Okay.
What? Did you call my son a brat? Looney bird.
James, Daniel Walsh, you said loony bird.
That's bending over right. That's it. You're leaning too far back before.
Hi, Francisco. How are you?
I guess the loonies come out at night, huh?
I guess the loonies come out at night, Daniel Walsh said.
Why don't you?
This is insulting and abusive language.
Let's just concentrate on the football.
And I'll go show you their car where they could take their car and go to the ballpark. Let me show you the time over here. (5:36 p.m.) June 6, 1994. This area is for access to the apartments and for parking. It is not for ball playing. There's 14 windows here, all of which could be broken. Okay. He just said, I know it's hard, loony bird. That's more insulting and abusive language. This should be done up at the playground. It should not be done in the parking area under my bedroom window.
Just concentrate on keeping your chin towards your knee. That's it. That's it.
That's Daniel Walsh.
I feel like the guy from the Mets, Brett Sagan,
Yeah, Nolan Ryan used to bring his chin way down.
Now there, what's going on Glendora versus Scott Lord? on the week of June 2nd to June 9th, D-Day week. This is the scheduling order from the United States Court of Appeal, and this is for the Judge Gattell bad decision that's being appealed, and we're stopping work on that until we finish the appeal on Judge Broderick's bad decision that Gannett is not a monopoly, is not an antitrust in Westchester. Now, on Monday, which was D-Day, and the coverage on television was superlative on the whole D-Day commemoration. It was superb. The interviews were fascinating of the men who had survived. My husband was in D-Day, and their coverage being there on the scene at the Normandy and Omaha Beach and Utah Beach and all that. And President Clinton did so well. So the coverage was superb. I keep asking Howard Schneider of Newsday, Long Island, if he's going to do anything about the information that I gave him that Commissioner James Picken of the Nassau County Department of Consumer Affairs is allowing Scott Lord to operate a lawn sprinkler business, a home improvement business, with no license. Howard Schneider doesn't seem to be with it much. He doesn't know what is going on his answering machine. He says, contact somebody at the assignment at the Long Island desk and they will be happy to help you. Well, they aren't happy and they're not helpful. So it's just not getting done. And that's an important piece of information that should get to the public. And after all, that's their job, to inform the public. Long Island Newsday. The big news, of course, is that Long Island Newsday, which is owned by Times Mirror, Times Mirror has merged with Cox Communications. Cox Communications was the 11th biggest cable company in the United States, and I don't know what Times Mirror was, but now they've merged, and this merger reportedly makes them number 3. TCI, the one we have in Westchester, is the nation's largest cable company, and next to that is Time Warner, and it looks like Cox is number 3. So that's big news. As far as News 12, Long Island, Cablevision, we keep asking them if they have done anything about the information that I've given them about Commissioner Picken allowing Scott Lord to operate a home improvement business without a home improvement license in Nassau County. And Mrs. Allshouse says that she has given it to somebody to investigate, but you keep calling up and you don't get any information. The bankruptcy court, it drags on and on and on and on and on. Judge Holland signed an order to okay the fees to be paid to the court for the adversary proceeding and so forth and that. But as far as getting down and paying the checks out to the creditors, that just never seems to happen. I was right to sue the bankruptcy court for negligence and to sue the panel trustee, Richard O'Connell, for negligence. It just doesn't get done. Here it is, 4.5 years that bankruptcy has been allowed to linger. And it still isn't done, and the checks are still not out to the creditors. It is a public disgrace. That the United States trustee has to sign off, and the United States trustee is not even going to look at it until June 15th, and this is June 9th. And then after that, there's some more stuff that has to be signed. Morning, I checked to report to you again, News 12 and Newsday so far haven't awakened. They haven't done anything about this public outrage. It costs about $40 for the printing and the postage to send out part 2 of the Scott Lord blog, to have it reduced and have it mailed out. Let's see if I can show you that. And I think that would bring it up to date because it goes out 32 pages at a time. There's the first 32. And here's the second group from pages 33 to 68. And I think that's all for the time being. It's going to go on forever if this bankruptcy court doesn't get its job done, and if the panel trustee doesn't get his job done. It's a disgrace. Here's the rest of it. And that can go up to pages, that can go up as far as page 102 before it goes out. Mr. Galata told Mr. Picken to please write to Glendora about this Scott Lord matter, a Scott Lord operating a business without a consumer affairs license. Mr. Galata told Mr. Picken that 2 weeks ago. Mr. Picken has not written Glendora. The minutes, only 20 minutes on April the 6th, when Scott Lord went before Judge Holland with a complaint that Glendora had violated the automatic stay, which of course was no case at all. Stuchin, if he had any brains at all, would realize that there was no case, but he did probably, and he just did it for the fee. But Scott Lord was dumb enough to go ahead and pay for that. It was a bunch of nonsense, and that's when Judge Holland compacted Bert Stuchin. So the minutes on that, I finally ordered them. The first price that these court stenographers wanted was $150. Send them $150 and they would look it up and then they'd tell you how much it costs. Well, that's unreasonable, and it's also a ripoff. And so I kept talking to them practically every day until finally I got the price down to $100. I got it down to $80, and I got it down to $50. And finally, when they went and got the minutes and typed them out, it was $40.50. Something has to be done, folks. Carbone, and the appellate term wouldn't take the case without the minutes. So this is a ripoff, and this is why people can't afford justice, why they can't afford to appeal, because of this a terrible cheating that's going on with the stenographer's minutes. So I think that the United States courts and the New York courts should hire their own stenographers, and that the minutes should be provided, and they should be provided free of charge, so that a person can afford to appeal, that a person can get justice. So anyway, I've sent down the $40.50, which is still too high. It should be more like $29, what it was in the United States District Court in White Plains. I'm talking now about the bankruptcy court in Brooklyn. So I sent them the $40.50, and the minutes are all typed. And when they come, I'll read you, because I want you to know this record of what a stupid thing this was to do, to bring it to court, and how Judge Holland really dealt with it very well. So I'll read that to you when it comes. And we're waiting on the decision from the appellate division whether to enlarge my time to perfect the appeal, because UPS and the printer, copy, with all their negligence, managed to make the 18 records on appeal and appellant's briefs, make them 1 day late after they cost something like $500 or $600 to print and to get there, and plus all the hours of work, like 50, 60 hours of work. So we're waiting to see, and I guess Stuchin has missed the boat on that one. He has not opposed it, or at least I have not got a copy of his opposition to it. This is the case that was before Judge Fredman, that was severed, where the 7 federal defendants stayed in the United States District Court, and is now being appealed. That was the first thing I showed you about Judge Gattel's bad decision. And then the O'Connell and Stahl and Barnes and Scott Lord, that part stayed with Judge Fredman, and he made the bad decision about that. So that's being appealed before the appellate division, and that's the one that was a day late. A doctor operated on Pete. Pete was telling his friend Bob, and Pete says, the doctor accidentally left a sponge inside of me. And Bob says, isn't that painful? Pete says, well, it's not so painful, it just makes me thirsty. So this is all that happened, I believed, on the week of June the 2nd to June the 9th on Glendora versus Scott Lord. and Judge Hall, and Judge Duberstein, and Jan Stahl, and Jeffrey Barnes, and Harold Jones, former United States trustee, Andrew Maloney, former United States attorney, Neil Mann, former assistant United States trustee, Teresa Kavanaugh, present United States trustee, Richard O'Connell, panel trustee, and Joseph Derby, who works for Pinkerton and is a security officer covering the United States Bankruptcy Court on Proviso Road in Westbury. Lawrence A. Tisch, who is the Chief Executive Officer of CBS Incorporated, his salary in 1993 was $1 million, $1,025,000. In addition to that, he received a bonus of $900,000. And in addition to that, he got a stock option of $8,500 shares. Let me say that again. He got a stock option of 8,500 shares. And he got other compensation of $153,864,000. So why don't you call that $154,000? Now, what does that add up to? That adds up to about $2 million, about $2.2 million, plus the value of the stock. We'll have to look up the value of the 8,500 shares. So that the present value of those 8,500 shares is $742,000. And that's in 1 year, Mr. Tisch got about $3 million. You read the annual reports of these companies, like Cablevision and like CBS and like Texaco. The executive compensation, oh, and of course Gannett, John Curley. The executive compensation is just one word, greed. The shareholders don't get anything much, but it all goes up to the executive compensation, all up to the CEO and all of his little friends and relatives. Where does this information come from? It comes from the proxy statement that goes to shareholders. The CBS Incorporated Notice of 1994 Annual Meeting of Shareholders and Proxy Statement. Now you see, before they were doing this and getting away with it just fine and nobody had anything to say about it because it was never made public. But the Securities Exchange Commission made this public. He confessed to his bride-to-be. He says, "I'm not much to look at, honey." And she says, "That's okay, dear. You'll be in the office most of the time." And this young lady was out with this young man. They were out on a date. And she said to him, "Did anybody ever tell you how wonderful you are?" And he says, "No." She says, "Well, where'd you get the big idea?" Now I want to tell you what happened to, or rather on, Glendora versus Mitchell Broder, Gannett Company Incorporated, Gannett Suburban Newspapers, John Curley, its CEO, Gary Watson, its president of newspaper division, Gary Sherlock, the president of Gannett Suburban Newspapers, who has just got a promotion to be the president of the Atlantic division or whatever it is, and Kenneth Paulson, on the matter that Gannett is a monopoly in Westchester and is antitrust. So that's one file. That's just the current file. We have here the annual report, which is still being read. Last year I did a really thorough job of telling you about the greed and the graft that's going on in the Gannett Corporation. And it looks like I'm just about ready to finish that. This is pretty clear admission to me that Gannett is antitrust and monopoly, as if we all didn't know that, living in Westchester. But the fact that they mention in their annual report that they don't compete with other newspapers in most of their markets. And that they mention these newspapers that joined Gannett, so they say, that's a euphemism for were gobbled up by Gannett, the Gannett Suburban Newspapers, Mamaroneck in 1964, Mount Vernon in 1964, the Daily Times, the Daily Argus, the Standard Star, the Citizen Register, New Rochelle, Ossining, 1964 and 1960. This isn't a monopoly, is it? Peekskill, 1985, Port Chester, 1964, Terrytown, 1964, West Nyack, Rockland, 1964, White Plains, 1964, Yonkers, 1964. Yeah. This doesn't sound like antitrust to you, does it? No. No. Now let's see if I can find that statement for you. It's a very telling statement. Okay, it's in my brief, my appellant's brief. So when I read you the appellant's brief, I can read you that. The company's newspapers compete with other media for advertising, principally on the basis of their advertising rates and their performance in helping with the advertiser's products or services. They compete for circulation principally on the basis of their content and their price. Wow, listen to this. Most of the company's newspapers do not have daily newspaper competitors that are published in the same city. I think that just tells it right there. That tells the whole story right there. And I said that to the U.S. Court of Appeals, Second Circuit. That shows antitrust. That shows monopoly. Let me read it to you again. Most of the company's newspapers do not have daily newspaper competitors that are published in the same city. That's from the annual report of GCI, Gannett Corporation, Gannett Company Incorporated. Would you have work papers for the Broder, Gannett, Antitrust, Broderick, Appellant's brief? Well, you see how skinny it is now? I wish I was skinny. I'm still 160. Well, that brief worksheet on the work papers is way down because you want to know why? Because the brief is done. And here it is, folks. Isn't it beautiful? With the blue binding and the blue cover. For the United States Court of Appeals, the appellant's brief has to be blue. And the appellee's brief, the respondent's in other words, has to be red. And the appellant's reply brief has to be gray. I never can figure out how to show this to you and hold this to you so you can see it. This part right here is the argument. It's 245 pages. I would estimate that there was like 45 hours work it took to make this. Just because Judge Broderick wants to the law to fit him as a Republican or whatever. Big business, certainly. And because he won't enforce the law, which he took an oath to do. And when you read the Clayton Act and the Sherman Act, which is here in my table of authorities, it says so clearly what antitrust is. And Judge Broderick just doesn't enforce the law. See, all of this is antitrust, the Clayton Act and the Sherman Act. And exactly what they said not to do, Gannett does, and Judge Broderick overlooks it. So that's going down today, folks, on June the 9th, to Mr. Lange, George Lange, who is the clerk of the United States Court of Appeals. And I ran into some very bad underclerks way down who were very rude and who had very bad attitudes and had chips on their shoulders. And so we had to fight this one out. And we fought it out until Mr. John Coffey, the deputy clerk, talked sense into them. And certainly I can send this to the clerks and they can look it over for procedural error, because I want to know if there's anything wrong with it before I go out and pay about $300 to have 10 more copies made of it. So there was no need to have that fight. It was a bad job. One of the people's name was Robert, and he wouldn't give his last name. Another man was Mr. Denty, and he wouldn't give his first name, and he wouldn't connect me to the clerk, and finally I had to call Mr. Grease's office. He's the chief judge. I even had to call Mr. Meekham's office in Washington, D.C. To get through these clerks and their bad tempers. This has a door, and there's a sign on it. It says, if you're too tall to go through this door, report to the basketball coach. And there's a sign on another door, if you're too wide to go through this door, report to the football coach. And if you took a bite out of this door, report to the hockey coach. My daughter keeps searching for the perfect guy. And I keep telling her, give up, honey. Your mother got the last one. Here's some more information from Title 22, New York's Code, Rules and Regulations, about how you can become a lawyer. You can go to law school for a year, and you have 1 year, and then you come out and you go to work in a law clerk's office, and for 3 years or whatever, and then you can take the bar, and you can be admitted to the bar if you pass the law exam. But Arnold Edmonds says, why do that? You know, if you're in law school, just stay in law school and finish it out. And by the way, the appellate division yesterday inducted 200 lawyers down in Brooklyn. And the family comes and everything. It's like a graduation. There's 3 different telephone lines. And one on one, the incoming call. I never make out calls on it. It's always free for incoming calls. That cost $28 a month, and you want to know something? $14 of that was taxes. Now, isn't that outrageous that we're paying that much taxes to New York State, for the MTA, for the municipal? This happens to be the city of White Plains, and for the federal taxes. Half of the telephone bill is taxes. Do you think that's right? And wasn't this country founded on taxation? Yeah, wasn't that what the fight was all about? I don't think the British could ever come up with worse taxes than we're getting now. And then on another phone, I think the taxes were something like $40. The bill was something like, I'd have to have all the bills in front of me to tell you. The total bill came up to something like $180. And you should tell me here how much the taxes were. As I recall, I think they were $48 were the taxes. And then on the third line, the bill was something like $50, and about $20 of that was taxes. It's outrageous. And that's not counting the long-distance carrier. When the long-distance carrier was another $50. So the total telephone cost for a month usually is about $230. Most of the day Sunday after church and before church, the 2 of us worked on this great big brief that you just saw, and the coverage of NBC and of C-SPAN was superlative, and my husband Franklin was in D-Day. He was in the English Channel. On Broder, the week of, let's see, that would be the week of May 30th, was 12 hours. Excuse me, 22 hours. You see this article in the newspapers that the Dems pick their judges? Don't tell me that judges are not political creatures. They certainly are. Robert DeBella, who's a law clerk for Anthony Scarpino, Ron Kerner of Greenberg, Ron Stokes of Rybrook, judge in the city court of the city of Yonkers. And I monitored her for a long time, the whole week of St. Patrick's Week of 1993. Yeah, 1993. And she's a good judge, from what I saw. That appellant's brief, 245 pages. I'll read you the argument. That's about 50 pages. And I'll do that after the clerks procedurally review my brief and see if I made any mistakes. Because if I did, I want to know about them and correct them before I make the 10 copies and pay $300 to $400 to have them copied. Office Max did this copying. I think they just did a great job. And I want to tell you how much it cost. What it cost to have these 245 pages copied, 2 sets, and for the binding and the color and all that, it cost $11, about $12. And they did it right away. They don't make you wait the way Staples does. Staples called me up. I left a message on Tom Stenberg. He's the owner of Staples, the founder. And saying, you know, that I thought he was paying too much for his advertising. I thought it was in the wrong places. I thought he waited too long when I had made him offers that were very, very reasonable a long time ago. And then this constant fight with Staples, you go in to have something copied. Oh, well, we have a backlog of 6 hours. You'll have to come back. Who wants to go back? And you need it right then and there is when you need it. So I told him when Office Max opened up that I was going to go to Office Max and try it out. And I like it very, very much. I like the people there, and I like the fast service on the copying, and the copying is done so well. Mr. Donovan does my copying. And so anyway, this man called up. Now, what was his name? He's Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Staples. And so he listened to my complaints, and I also put in good words for Debbie and for Lucas and for Jennifer. But he says, yes, he says, what you say is true. We aren't doing what we can do. We're trying to correct it. We've grown so fast and so forth. So then he says, give me your address and I'll send you a gift certificate. Well, I don't know how I will use that gift certificate. To his dentist, Doc, you still haven't pulled the right tooth yet. The dentist says, I know, but I'm getting closer. And the second day, have you noticed, the second day of your diet is a whole lot easier than the first. Why? Because the second day you go off of it. And this is what has happened this week on Glendora versus Mitch Broder and Gannett, suburban newspapers, and John Curley and Gary Sherlock and Kenneth Paulson and Corkindale and Gary Watson. The week from June the 2nd to June the 9th, 1994. Keep your courage flaming. And nothing has happened on Glendora versus the DHCR and Governor Cuomo and Aponte and Diaz and Veronica Diaz and Carol Short and Mr. Ayala and Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Freed. Nothing has happened, and Judge Coppola, nothing has happened on that matter this week, and nothing will happen, I don't think, because everything now is on appeal before the appellate division in Brooklyn, and they will be practically a year and a half before we have oral arguments on that, and then probably a month later making their decision. So that's a year and a half on Glendora versus the DHCR. William Street and Judge Coppola. I just went out into the field. It's a great natural resource. It's about 10 lots out here that were bought for development, and then that was frustrated by the city of White Plains. It would have ruined the highlands. And so it's just a field now with lots of trees and lots of plants and lots of growth. It's just a beautiful thing right in the middle of White Plains. And I was out there and I saw a new dog on the block. I've never seen this new dog. And he came over and he was a very friendly dog. He was a great big dog. Great big dog. And big tall dog. He was a German Shepherd. And the man with him, his name is Mr. Gallo, William Gallo. And I asked him if he related to Bernie Gallo of Cablevision Yonkers. And he said no, and he works for the the building department. His supervisor is Mr. Terrio, and of course Mr. Terrio's boss is Mr. Amicone, whom I sued, remember, for negligence, for not answering the telephone and for not returning the calls and for not enforcing the building code and all kinds of things, about 12 counts. And then the city of White Plains had to pay a lawyer down in Manhattan to lie and cover up for that. And I appealed that, and that's at the appellate division. Now, it'll be about a year before we have the oral argument on that. Well, I didn't tell Mr. Gallo that. And so we talked about what a beautiful natural resource the field is. And that, the Amicone thing, of course, is a spin-off from the Lydia Gallicano suits. It came from Mr. Amicone awarding a certificate of occupancy with no inspection at 40 Longview Avenue, and a few other things. That the sheriff went to the tenants of 40 Longview Avenue, which is owned by Lydia Gallicano at 42 Longview Avenue, and the tenants demanded, the sheriff demanded that the tenants pay the rent, not to Lydia Gallicano, but to the sheriff, to collect this judgment against Lydia Gallicano for $1,580. And with the interest and all of the fees, that has gone up to $1,900 and something like $30. Well, the tenant upstairs, Gomez Vasquez, he's a man and Gomez is a woman. She told the sheriff, the police officer, Haig, that she would not pay the rent to the sheriff, that she had a contract with Lydia Gallicano to pay the rent to her. So that means now I can go to court and I can have, compel the court to make the tenants pay the sheriff. So that's another court action. And then the tenant downstairs has not declared whether that said tenant will pay the sheriff or pay Lydia Gallicano. So if they don't, we will have to go over there and get a declaration from them whether they're going to or whether they're not going to. And if they're not going to, we'll have to bring a second court action against the tenants downstairs to pay this rent to the sheriff. To the appellate term in Brooklyn to compel Lydia Gallicano to pay the judgment of $1,580. Judge DiPaolo did receive my plea that Gallicano, Ornberger got in their opposition, their silly opposition, way too late for me to answer it on time before the return date, and asking for a special application to consider my opposition to many of the lies that were told in the Gallicano-Ornberger opposition to my motion to the appellate term to compel Lydia Gallicano to pay the judgment that the appellate term ruled in my favor and against Lydia Gallicano. Here's the judgment right here. I just happened to come across it in the file. So that was sent from Mineola, where Judge DiPaolo's chambers are, to Brooklyn, where the clerk's office is for the appellate term, 9th and 10th Judicial Districts. So we're waiting on that. And what's the return date on that? Just a second. The return date on that is May the 23rd, and you can expect a decision in 6 to 8 weeks on that. Which would be June the 7th, the day after D-Day, 50 years ago. My husband Franklin was in D-Day. He was in the Army 5 years, and in D-Day he set forth from Bristol, well, before D-Day, he set forth from Bristol, England to Southampton, England, where he boarded a Liberty ship and where they set sail across the English Channel for the Great Invasion. In 1994, I left a message on the telephone recorder of Lydia and Larry Gallicano at 42 Longview Avenue, White Plains, New York, 10605. And the message said, it was a notification that Glendora versus Lydia Gallicano was on television last night at 5:30 p.m. on Channel 14. That's White Plains Public Access, and it was on for a half an hour. And at the end of that notification, I said, remember, we own some of your property. That is because when you get a judgment against anybody, you do obtain possession of their property, and that's good for 10 years, or until they pay the judgment off and you give them a satisfaction. Well, later that afternoon of June the 7th, 1994, Mr. Haig, county police officer in the civil division of the sheriff, called me and said that John Ornberger had called him, and said that John Ornberger said he would pay $1,580, and that's all. Now, I told you the bill is up now to $1,930. The sheriff pretty much indicated they would drop their fees of about $100, their poundage, and that I would be out $50 that I paid this sheriff. It's really more than that. I paid about $100 in fees to the court clerks to make the transcript of judgment and to have the judgment entered in the county clerk's book, and to pay for the execution, and then to go down to the sheriff and pay $10.50 for them to go try to collect it from the bank, which Lydia Gallicano changed the accounts, closed the accounts, and try to collect it from Lydia Gallicano, and then try to collect it from the upstairs tenant, and then try to collect it from the downstairs tenant. So that's added up to about $100 in fees. So I thought about that, and $1,580 I decided that I would accept on these conditions. How soon? All at once, and a cash or check. And so the Officer Haig called Ornberger back, and he found out that, and told him my terms, 3 days, that would be Friday, tomorrow of this week, that the check would be here. It would be by check, and that when I had the check, I would issue the satisfaction. So the satisfaction is just about written, but the check isn't here, and this is Thursday. And here's what the satisfaction looks like, satisfaction of judgment. It's a simple form. You just state that when the judgment was entered, who awarded the judgment, that would be the appellate term. When the judgment was entered in the county clerk's office, and who the judgment, and whom the judgment was in favor of, and whom it was against. And so that's all ready to go, and I would even have the judgment delivered to them in person. They only live a block and a half away from us. In fact, as the crow flies, it would be exactly 1 block. And that's where things stand on Glendora versus Lydia Gallicano on June the 9th, 1994, Thursday. Just as an aside here, when we go to Pace Law Library and we copy things from the books, the law books, and when we go to the White Plains Library and we copy things from the law books, we always look for scrap paper because we always want to save the trees. And so here's some of the scrap paper that Franklin brought home from Pace Law Library. Now, it's very, very interesting, the scrap paper. You see, what this is you go LexisNexis, okay, in the computer, and you say, tell me what cases there were against antitrust in newspapering. And they come up with all of the cases. They give you the section. They give you the subject matter. They tell you what happened. Let me read one of them to you. This one isn't very interesting. Reed versus Woodruff County, Arkansas, 7F 3rd 808. Let's see, that would be the 7th volume of the Federal Digest, I guess, or the Federal Reports, 3rd edition, page 808. Lawyers, you know, this whole thing of citing all these citations, you can find just as many citations for a case as against it. You can find just as many laws for a thing as against it. And so they hand out all these citations and all these cases, and it's all very automatically. You know, they just put it in the computer and it comes up and they print it, and then they put it in their briefs. Ridiculous. I don't know, the whole court system and the whole law technique leaves a lot to be denied. A lot to be desired. Under diet, you eat anything you want, and in the morning you wonder why your clothes fit. And have you heard about the Army diet? This is a D-Day joke. Have you heard about the Army diet? Everything you eat goes to the front. And videotape of John Iodize and Riemann Auto Body, because every spring he and his neighbors, they have a lake in their neighborhood or a pond, and every spring all of the neighbors get together and they clean up that pond. And it's John's job. He goes into his high waders and he goes into the pond and he brings up all of the sludge that has accumulated on the bottom and puts it on the side of the pond, and then it dries out in the sun, and it's another neighbor's job to come and pick it up and so forth. So they keep the pond beautiful, and I wanted him to come on TV and tell you about that. It's a great neighborhood effort. The week of June the 2nd to June the 9th on Glendora versus Daniel Walsh, Roberta Walsh, and their son James Walsh. The oral examination, my going to the lawyers of, well, first of all, you have Andrew Larkin and Kevin Larkin, and they have an insurance company. And that insurance company hires the lawyers Wilson, Bobby, Conboy, etc. Wilson, Bobby, Conboy, Koza, and Cousins. All right, they hire those lawyers, and the insurance company wants a deposition from me. And I am very interested in doing that because it's another chance to tell my story. And I did not break any laws, so I have nothing to cover up and I have nothing to lie about. So I'm looking forward to this. You'll have to be very, very careful of their questions, that their questions are honest and true and genuine. But that's all right. And so that was scheduled on the same day that I have a conference with Judge Colabella. And so it looked in doubt that I could go to that deposition, and so I postponed it until July 18th. Then I found out that with Colabella I could get through earlier, and that we could have this oral depositions, oral examination on June 24th, which is only like a week or so from now. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that, and that's what's happening on that. It's for June 24th in the afternoon at their offices at 2 William Street, which is off of Main Street near Subway Sandwiches, on June the 24th, and I'll go to Colabella on June the 22nd. My opposition to Judge Wood and his dippy decisions. I really don't even think Judge Wood has ever seen my papers. I honestly don't think that he has read them. I think that his law clerk reads them, his law clerks write out these silly decisions, and I really don't think Judge Wood has ever seen them. So here is my protest of these decisions. And it's to Judge Traficante. He's the head of all of the judges in Albany outside of New York City. And it's to Judge Malonis. He's the head of all of the judges in New York City. And it's to Governor Cuomo. And it's to Gerald Stern, who is the head of the Judicial Conduct, which never does anything but write form letters. To Gary Casella, the same. That's the disciplinary committee of the 9th and 10th Judicial Districts, I guess, maybe just the 9th. And he never does anything but write form letters. It's all the buddy system, you know. The judge can do anything, and all their buddies will stand up for them. To Judge Ingracia, who's the administrative judge of the 9th and 10th Judicial Districts. He's here in White Plains in the county courthouse tower. And to Judge Judith Kay, she's the chief judge of the state of New York, and she's the presiding judge for the New York State Court of Appeals. And to you, my TV audience, and to Judge Wood. Glendora is tired of Judge Wood's dippy decisions. The first decision was that the defendants did not default with their answer when they clearly did. And also he dismissed the motion because Glendora typed on both sides of the paper. The second paper he denied because Glendora wrote on both sides of the paper. And because he said there was no affidavit of service. There was an affidavit of service. It was in the papers, and it is in the file this day in the county clerk's office, and further we have a copy in our files. He just missed it. The third decision was as dippy as the first two, an order to show cause saying Glendora did not have Daniel Walsh, wife Roberta Walsh, and son James Walsh personally served because Franklin Buell personally served Daniel Walsh, the father, for all three of them, the wife and the son. CPLR 309 states that service upon an infant shall be by serving parent. So only Roberta Walsh was not served personally, but what was wrong with serving her through her husband Daniel Walsh? Motions 2 and 3 were unopposed, but Judge Wood rules against the plaintiff anyhow. Now, about writing on two sides of the paper, Glendora does that, A, to save the trees, and B, to save taxpayers the real estate costs of storing papers with blank sides. A judge of all people should know that everything has two sides. For reasons A and B above, Glendora has submitted her papers to the city courts, town courts, Supreme Courts, appellate term, and appellate division for years, and nobody has been nitpicking enough to complain about writing on two sides. It is the only thing to do. Glendora wants to know something. Did Judge Wood make these decisions? I truly doubt that he did. Or did his clerk, Mr. Carlucci, make these decisions? And so often as happens in Supreme Court, the judge merely signs anything a law clerk puts in front of him and enters a digit on the date. Glendora wants to know, did Judge Wood read the papers? The law clerk, Mr. Carlucci, is abrasive, arrogant, and ill-tempered. Judge Wood's clerk is just the opposite. Amiable, pleasant, what a human being should be. And his office is a model of neatness, a beauty to behold. Glendora submitted her summons with notice and complaint listing over 500 tortious acts perpetrated upon her by defendants. Judge Wood has done not a thing to help her. He has had this case for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he does not move it along. Judge Wood has been of no help to Glendora whatsoever. Glendora wants her $245 back. This is a ripoff. Plaintiff Glendora has written nearly 800 pages to Judge Wood, and he has returned 6 dippy pages, only 1/3 full. Why is Judge Wood on the side of the lawbreakers? Glendora did not break any laws, and Judge Wood rules against her. Why doesn't Judge Wood deal with the issue? Fright, shock, insulting and abusive language, willful malicious conduct, intentional infliction of emotional distress, disturbing utterances, profane language, extreme behavior going beyond all possible bounds of decency, utterly intolerable in a civilized community. Glendora monitored Judge Wood for a long time and certainly expected more professionalism than this. She knows his grandson Dean Wood in the county clerk's office. Judge Wood has remained silent on Glendora's 140-page summons with notice and complaint, which he received months ago. Look what due process says a judge should be. Due process demands an unbiased, impartial judge, free from any personal interest in the verdict. There has been no oral argument, no trial. Everything is on paper. It is like a correspondence school. There is no eyeball-to-eyeball contact. Why doesn't Judge Wood come to grips with the issue? A lawyer said to Glendora, you give these judges tough decisions to make, and they don't want to make them, so they find ways around them. Well, judges are getting paid $95,000 a year, or is it $103,000 a year, or is it to make decisions, and that is their job. Further, it is not the law clerk's job to make decisions. It is not the law clerk's job to make decisions. Glendora encloses her protest to the first 2 decisions which she withheld, hoping things would get better. But since things have worsened, she will let them loose. Both to you and to her TV audience. The message to the public is go ahead and break the law, and the Westchester Supreme Court will support you all the way. Here is today's joke. The patient said to the dentist, Doc, you still haven't pulled the right tooth yet. The dentist says, I know, but I'm getting closer. Yours in truth, Glendora. Box 416, White Plains, New York, 10602, 914-949-9495. Postscript. My husband was in D-Day 50 years ago. This is not the kind of America that he and others fought for. They did not fight for this kind of a court. My analysis of the first Dippy's decision and of the second Dippy decision. This is what they write here. This is what you pay $245 for. Take a look at this. Right there and there. Isn't that great? Isn't that worth 3 years of law school and $245? Here's another one. That's what he wrote. And that sentence right up there. And that took 3 or 4 weeks. Daniel Walsh and James Walsh playing baseball out in the courtyard was on June the 3rd, 1994, Friday. Because of them, no, it wasn't. That was on, yeah, there was one on Friday, and I didn't do anything about it. So the videotape I showed you was on D-Day, June the 6th, 1994, Monday. And on that one, I called the police. And Officer Fisher wrote the report of both the Friday incident and the Monday incident. And because of Daniel Walsh and his son James Walsh, and emotional disturbance, taking away my peace and my warranty of habitability, I missed a chat with Glendora, which was on Channel 14, Monday night at 5:30 p.m. because of them. The Walshes made, Daniel Walsh and Roberta Walsh and James Walsh made excessive noise in the hall and shouting and going up and down the stairs, stomping on Saturday. Saturday they went away, and Sunday they were away, and it was peace. Mary Ann made the halls look very nice on Sunday. There's been no offenses from the Larkins, and there's been no offenses from the Pulches. I asked Reverend Charles Calcani if it's all right with him that I take him off of the mailing list. I have mailed him these, and he has never spoken about this matter, nor he's never contributed anything to its solution. And Mrs. Daniels, I called. She's the secretary for Chief Bradley, and I asked if Chief Bradley had received the letter of complaint about Lieutenant Quinn and Officer Fisher. All they do is take reports. They never solve the problem. They never come up to the Walshers and say, "Did you do this?" Nothing like that. They just sit on their gluteus maximus and write reports. And you know what Mrs. Daniels said if I asked if Lieutenant Quinn had received it? And she said, yes, oh, excuse me. Let me start over again. Guess what Mrs. Daniels' response was when I asked her if Chief Bradley had received my letter of complaint? Oh, yes, she said, and he's given it to Lieutenant Quinn. Now, isn't that intelligent? Lieutenant Quinn already gets a copy, and Chief Bradley should know that. Isn't that a great action on the part of Chief Bradley? Didn't he take a lot of action? Yes, he gave the letter to Lieutenant Quinn. Have I heard from Lieutenant Quinn? No. The washer and the dryer worked just fine. And did you hear about the dentist who married the manicurist? The dentist who married the manicurist, and now they fight tooth and nail. Monday D-Day was the incident I videotaped for you and I've already shown you. And the coverage by NBC and CNN and C-SPAN was superb.